He's got a new podcast he's launching soon. He writes at Newsweek. Josh Hammer joins us now. Josh, appreciate you coming on. We dove in right at the start of the show to the $83 million verdict that Donald Trump got hit by in the latest E. Jean Carroll civil lawsuit. It's one of the craziest things I've ever seen. I mean, he's getting charged with defamation for saying he didn't sexually assault someone, which seems like if he didn't say that, she would be defaming him. What am I missing here, or do you think this is as bonkers as I do?
Clay, great to join you guys. I think it's as bonkers as you do. I mean, the analogy that I drew this morning on my new show, America on Trial, which is a podcast we launched today to cover all of the various legal drama about the 2024 election. But the analogy that I made on the podcast this morning was I was thinking back to Brett Kavanaugh. I mean, let's think back to September 2018, back when Christine Blasey Ford was defaming him, when she was accusing him of doing things that he did not do. And then, Clay, if you remember, Kavanaugh gets up there in that long hearing in late September, very tense hearing, and he robustly defends himself, and he accuses Senate Democrats of trying to seek revenge for the Clintons. And his critics in the media, the liberals, the Democratic senators there on the dais, they said, oh, he's not acting judicial. This is not how you want a Supreme Court justice to act. To which I responded, what in the world are you talking about? If we are choosing someone to be a U.S. Supreme Court justice, or here with Trump, if we are choosing someone to be a U.S. president, I want someone who, when he is accused of groping, sexually assaulting, rape, or something of that sort, I want someone who's going to stand his ground and defend his character and integrity. So it's absolutely as ridiculous as you say it is. It's doubly or triply ridiculous because if you look at the actual numbers involved here, Clay, you had $18.3 million in compensatory damages. I'm not sure exactly how they calculated that. That's basically what the jury says was required to make her whole again. That's restitution. And then they had $65 million in punitive damages on top of that. I think that's probably even unconstitutional when you have punitive damages that so far exceed compensatory damages. The Supreme Court for the past 25, 30 years has really been trying to crack down on punitive damages. So I think Trump has a very, very strong case here on appeal.
Speaking of Josh Hammer, he's got a new podcast launched out there today, America on Trial with Josh Hammer. And Josh, in terms of the legal wrangling as you see it in Texas and with the federal government and this razor wire situation, do you have any expectations that this is going to now get escalated? Do you think the Biden regime is going to back off? And ultimately, is this going to stay with a very limited decision to say, yeah, okay, federal government can remove wire where they want to remove it, and that's that?
I think that's probably where it's going to stay. I'm not sure that it's going to heat up more than that for the very simple reason that in an election year like this, where Joe Biden is very worried looking at the polls, he's looking at an approval rating when it comes to the immigration issue, Buck. He's looking at an approval rating of something like 25, 30 points underwater, maybe 20 points underwater on a good day. Facing those political headwinds, he is not going to want to put himself in a position where he's actually having a showdown with Greg Abbott and the Texas Department of Public Safety and the Texas Rangers at the border. So the order from the Supreme Court last week effectively says that U.S. Border Patrol can go in and snip razor wire. It says nothing whatsoever about whether Texas can actually install new wire. So they're going to keep on doing that, or at least they should, and it becomes something of a Mexican standoff, pun very much intended, obviously, between who's going to drop their weapon first. And again, with those political headwinds and the polling as it is, I think that Joe Biden is going to drop his weapons, both literally and proverbially speaking, first. So I think that Abbott and Texas are going to stand strong here. They're backed by all the Republican governors except for Scott up in Vermont. They're going to stand strong, and they're going to come out looking really good at this. This is a huge political victory in the making for Greg Abbott, I think, in Texas.
Josh, when you look at the number of trials, you're doing the new podcast breaking down all the legal situation. New York City, Washington, D.C., South Florida, and Atlanta. How many of those do you think will go to trial and be resolved before 9 months from now when all of us have the opportunity to go out and vote in November?
Clay, I'm not entirely sure that any of them will be resolved, to be honest with you. Obviously, the prosecutors are going to do everything they possibly can to get these trials finish before then. The Florida case, the Mar-a-Lago case, they're looking like around May. The trial date's actually going to start. You know, Fonnie Willis in Georgia, right now they're talking about August. That's a long ways away, and that's to say nothing. I mean, it was just on Friday the Georgia State Senate created this new committee by a vote of 30-19 to look into whether she is misallocating taxpayer resources there in Georgia. She's got her own sex scandal. She's got a scandal of her own there. So that's probably not going to get underway anytime soon. I think if there's one case that actually could make it to the finish line before the November election, it probably actually is Alvin Bragg in New York City. And that actually militates very favorably for Donald Trump. That's actually a great thing for Trump if that's the only case that can make it across the finish line, because it is so transparently stupid, Clay. It is so transparently a frivolous case. At the time that Alvin Bragg unveiled those charges last April, you had even liberal commentators, the Jake Tappers of the world, people like that, who couldn't even bring themselves to defend it. The New York Times editorial board was even less than enthusiastic itself. So if that really is the one case that Alvin Bragg can squeeze in here before the November election, I think that Trump can make a big stink out of that. He would be proper and right to make a big stink out of that. So I don't think the politics of this, based on that timeline, are necessarily going to be too terrible for him. If I'm right, of course. There's a million variables here.
Josh Hammer, everybody. America on Trial with Josh Hammer, the new podcast that is out today. Go check it out wherever you get your podcasts. I would suggest the iHeart app. Start there. Josh, thanks for being with us, man. Great to talk to you.
Always a pleasure, guys. Thank you.